Have you ever looked at a pattern of migration and wondered why it just keeps going? Even long after the original reasons, the jobs or the initial crisis seem to have faded away? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the hidden architecture of migration, the powerful, often invisible forces that don't just kickstart the movement of people, but keep it going, sometimes for generations.
And that really is the central puzzle, isn't it? We think migration starts for a simple reason, like a better job opportunity. But then why does the flow of people often continue and even grow years later? What's the engine that gives migration this momentum, this life of its own? Okay, so to get our heads around this, our source material offers a fantastic analogy. Think about a massive construction project. Now, yeah, some people show up for the high wages, but a much bigger driver, it's way simpler. It's the fact that your brother already works on site. He's got a spare bed for you, he can introduce you to the foreman, he knows which lunch spots to avoid, he can show you the ropes. That simple personal connection, that's the key.
And that idea, that insider connection, well, that brings us to our first major piece of this puzzle, what academics call social capital. So what exactly is social capital? Well, first off, it has nothing to do with money in your bank account. It's all about the value of your network. It's that whole web of family, friends, and community ties that connect people across borders. These connections are an incredibly powerful resource, and they make the huge, life-altering decision to move just so much easier. I mean, just think about the difference between the very first person to migrate from a village, let's call them the pioneer, and everyone who comes after. For that pioneer, the journey is tough. The costs are high, the risks are enormous, they're going in blind. But for the next person, the network migrant, it's a completely different story. That path has been paved, their connection provides crucial information, a safe place to land, and maybe even a job waiting for them. It just dramatically lowers the cost and the risk of the entire venture. And this, right here, is the very essence of what we call chain migration. It all starts with that one pioneer who becomes the first link in the chain. As more people use that connection to follow, the costs and the risks just plummet. And over time, this process can become so common, so established, that it's not even a radical choice anymore. It becomes a normal, expected rite of passage. It's just what you do. Now, let's build on that idea. If social capital is all about the connections between people, our next theory, cumulative causation, is about how migration starts to change the environment itself. Right. So the really crucial idea behind cumulative causation is that migration begins to feed itself. It stops being just a series of one-off, individual decisions, and instead becomes a process that builds its own momentum. Every single person who moves, in ways big and small, changes the world for the next person who's thinking about it. This is the absolute core of it. If you remember one thing about this concept, let it be this. Moving isn't an isolated event that just ends when someone arrives. It sends ripples backward and forwards, back to the home community and out into the new country, fundamentally changing the social and economic landscape for everyone. So, how does that actually work? Well, it happens through these really powerful feedback loops. Think about it. When a lot of young people leave a town, it changes the local job market back home. It totally shifts the culture, so maybe migration becomes a symbol of success or adulthood. These changes create this self-reinforcing cycle that becomes incredibly difficult to influence from the outside, which, by the way, helps explain why government policies often have such a hard time making a dent. But, these huge, powerful forces aren't the whole story, not by a long shot. We also have to zoom all the way in and look at the human being who's right at the center of this decision. And that brings us to our third perspective, individual agency. Now, this approach is a really important reality check. It reminds us that behind all the charts, all the data, all the theories, there are actual human beings. People are not just stock or some faceless labor force getting pushed and pulled around a global chessboard. No, they are thinking, feeling, rational actors, weighing their own unique situations, and making deeply, deeply personal choices. And what is it that drives that choice? Well, so often, it's a tipping point. It's that moment an individual looks at their life, their situation, their level of deprivation, and decides no more. This has become simply intolerable. It's a powerful personal calculation of what is good for them and their family, what's necessary, and what they simply cannot bear any longer. So there we have it, 3 really powerful ideas. And here's the thing, none of them, on their own, can tell the whole story. The real insight, the true understanding, comes when we start to layer them on top of each other and see the full, complex picture.
So let's just pull these three lenses together one last time. First, you have the network of social capital, which is what builds the bridges and clears the path. Then you have the changing environment of cumulative causation, where the landscape itself is literally reshaped by every single person who crosses. And finally, you have the individual, the human being making a deeply personal choice to walk that path. It's the dynamic interplay between these three forces that truly creates the architecture of migration. And all of this leaves us with one final and I think crucial question. If migration is really a self-feeling process, built on human networks, environmental shifts, and profoundly personal decisions, what does that actually mean for our traditional ideas about controlling it? What does it mean for policy, for our communities, and for the very concept of a border itself?